Hey guys, Equinox is going to be the Everbloom Mythic Plus guide. I'm going to go over what the mobs do, what the bosses do, and how to deal with them. So yeah, let's get right into it. This first area is going to be Naturalists, Cultivators, and Dread Petals and Stingers. So the Naturalists have two casts. They have Dancing Thorns and Choking Vines. Dancing Thorn does not recast on CC and requires a 2 to 3 person kick rotation. And then Choking Vines is CCable without recast. If it does go off, then it stuns somebody and you have to either kick it or CC it or dispel it. The Dread Petals put a slow and damage taken increase on you, which is removed by either Freedom, Tiger's Lust, Vengeful Retreat, anything that removes roots. Then there's the Cultivators, and they do an Enraged Growth cast, which does not recast on CC. And then there's the Stingers, which leap to somebody and put a poison debuff that explodes if you do not dispel it in time. And yeah, so basically the only dangerous mobs in this first area are the Stingers. The Naturalists are mostly just tank damage. They almost only strictly target the tank. The Stingers are about the only like gatekeeper, I would say. So try to reduce the amount of Stingers you pull to however many poison dispels that you have. Dread Petals are fairly easy to deal with. They really don't do much. They just increase the damage the tank does. And if you have a frequent removal like Vengeful Retreat or Tiger's Lust or Freedom, then they are extremely easy to deal with. Freedom prevents the application completely, so you can just put that on beforehand or just like remove it at like however many stacks, and then you won't get application for a while. And yeah, that's about it for the first area. There's also, I think you might run into one Mender, and what the Mender does is basically just a Healy that you have to stop. Pretty easy to deal with. It's called Healing Waters. It does not recast on CC, so yeah, pretty simple to deal with. This whole first area is basically just like, so you do one big pull with your cooldowns, then you just do small pulls, and then you do another big pull in the first boss's area. And then the first boss area is just 7 Naturalists and 3 Cultivators. So you just have to pull that however you wish. Ideally, you would pull the Padding Cultivator or the Padding Naturalist and Mender together with the 2 Naturalists that are right next to it. I think you'll see it. If you are a VDH or a group with a lot of AoE CC, you can pull more if you're confident in living all the Naturalists. So just grouping it up is kind of a pain. And you're going to kind of see what I mean. Like, you can just do multiple altogether. And then after that, you're going to go into the first boss. So I'm just going to show you basically how this looks if you're doing this. So yeah, you're just mostly focusing on CCing the Choking Vines cast and the Healing Waters cast. See all the Healing Waters there. We CC'd them and they don't recast on CC. And then DC Choking Vines, so we beam it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all you have to do. You can, as long as you can group this up, you can do this on any tank. It's just the issue of grouping it up. A way you can group it up is kind of pulling them all together, then going into one of these like alleyways you see right here. You can do that. And then we're gonna go on to the first boss. So this first boss is very simple. I'm pulling this. I would recommend pulling these Dread Petals on top of the first boss. It's pretty easy, and it's just free count with the boss. And the first boss has a couple mechanics. He has a Parched Gas, which is just a frontal. He does 2 per phase, and then once he reaches 0 energy, he goes into his intermission. So he targets one person. He targets ranged only with this. So if you're a ranged healer or a ranged DPS, then the root mechanic will only target you. And basically, you get this little arrow on your head, and you drop a root. And you basically, when he goes into the intermission, these balls of water will come out from the water in the river, and they will slowly move towards him. And if they reach him, then he gets 25 energy. If he gets to 100, which is 4 of them, he ends the phase. And during this phase, he's taking 100% increased damage. So you want to prolong this phase as long as possible. And you do that by creating a barrier of these roots that you see here and just goal keeping the balls coming in. And once the balls hit the roots, they will turn into an ad and consume the root, and the root will no longer be there. It does 2 balls, if they're the exact same spot, can consume 1 orb, or 2 balls can consume 1 root. So if you can do that, that'd be great. So basically the job of the range player or whoever it is basically just to turn around and look where the balls are coming from, and that's where you want to guard. So you're basically kind of playing Plants vs. Zombies here, and you're just goalkeeping them. And yeah, that's that's pretty much it. You just do that the entire fight. I would so how I've looked at doing this is cooldowning on pole and then having your next set of 2 minutes up for the second intermission. If you want, you can also save lust and just lust on the first burn phase. But yeah, you kind of see how this works. It's really simple. You're just goal keeping, and then you're just hitting the boss the entire time. On Tyrannical, this is going to be kind of a long fight. I think you might get like 3 intermissions on a hierarchy, and then 4 you should be able to intermission him pretty regularly. And watch out for the frontal. He does a frontal right after, and he'll do 1 more frontal, and then he'll do a frontal at the very end of his energy bar, but it'll get canceled when he phases. And that's pretty much it for the first boss. Super simple. Doesn't really do much. If you can find a way to pull more trash on top of this boss, I would, because it's really easy. So might be the play to just pull more trash on top of this boss. And then you're gonna see the canceled frontal I'm gonna talk about. So he's gonna start casting this Parched Gasp, and then it's gonna cancel right there and go to the intermission. All right, let's move on. So this next area of trash is easily the most dangerous. So there's these berserkers right here. And these berserkers, basically what they do is a leap that only goes to range. It's called Bounding Whirl, and they also have an Enrage, which increases their attack speed. So this only goes to range. It might also just be the only person out of. So if everyone, kind of like the Juggernauts, it might just respect that rule. But we'll see. Basically, so what you have to do is there's 2 ways to play around this. One, you either have stuff like Vortex, Binding Shot. You can trap in your path and deal with it that way. Or you can pre-CC it. If you guys ever did miss a turn aside, the wolves or the dogs in the maze, if you CC'd them right before they cast their bite, it just would not cast it at all. It would not. It would just go on full cooldown. And you can do the same thing with these berserkers. If you stun them right as their thing comes off cooldown, then it won't cast it at all. The other mob in here is the Twisted Abomination. This is probably the most dangerous mob. He does a Poison Claw, which is just a tank buster that puts a dot on you, and that's super easy to deal with. You just poison to spell it or just eat it. And then there's Noxious Eruption. Now, this is unCCable, and it does a huge raid-wide damage plus a dot. So you have to try to not pull 2 of these at the same time. I would not recommend pulling more than 1 of these at the same time, as I'm pulling 2 of them right here, and we're going to regret that at some point. But yeah, that's pretty much. And the berserkers, so if you're like a hunter or a boomkin or any form of druid, then all you have to do is just put a vortex down, and then it'll grab them back, like you see right there. Pretty easy to deal with. Otherwise, you just stand kind of far away, so you have time to move. And if you're a tank with like leg sweep or something like that, then you just want to pre-CC them if you can, if you help your group. I'll link a Weakaura down below called Spell Cooldowns on Nameplates, and that'll basically tell you when it's about to come off cooldown, so you can prepare for that. And we're gonna fast forward because that's I explain all the trash, so you can kind of see how to deal with it. And then there's this pack right here. There's another abomination in the corner that you want to avoid. And that's this whole area of trash is just abomination and berserkers. So you just want to kind of pull reasonably slow, do 1 abomination at a time, or skip them completely, and then get to the second boss. So the second boss is 2 casters, and they kind of go in phases. So first one active is going to be Earthshaper Telu, and he's going to be casting Nature's Wrath and Toxic Bloom. Toxic Bloom is the special long cast that you must kick. And then the other one will be casting the Torrential Fury, which does just AoE damage, and you can't kick it. So basically, you just want to be kicking as much as possible on these Nature's Wrath and just have 1 person late kick the Bloom. So you see that Bloom right there? You want to kick this as late as possible because he just chain casts Nature's Wrath the entire time, and like he doesn't respect kick lockouts. He just keeps casting and casting and casting. So you want to make sure you're late kicking the Toxic Bloom as late as possible, and same with the other one when it switches. And then there's going to be a Noxious Charge on a tank. You're going to have to rotate defensives on this, and what it does is it charges you, it drops a puddle where you are, and it drops a puddle on everybody else. And if you're like melee, if you drop it on top of the caster boss, then you're gonna lose room. So how we deal with this boss is just kill like X. We just hard focus X and just only hit X and get it done as fast as possible. So you're going to see Toxic Bloom here, and then it switches. And then this guy's going to cast his Fury and be unkickable. And then the other guy's going to cast his special. See that Revitalize? That's a big heal. You don't want that to go off. And we're just hard focusing X and throwing random kicks on Skull. And once you kill X, then he no longer does his special, and he just casts Water Bolt. Then there's an Noxious Charge again. I'm the only melee, so it's a lot easier for me to deal with. And you just rinse and repeat this the entire fight. Depending on if they changed anything or if you need to kill these evenly, you might have to actually swap off, or if like your melee don't get off the boss, you'll probably have to swap to Skull whenever you mess that up. So you might have to switch casters back and forth depending on how the Noxious Charges end up or what your comp is. But yeah, ideally you kill one caster first, ideally the one casting, so Telu, and then you kill the other caster, then you kill the big guy. The big guy doesn't really do anything besides tank damage and drops a little bit of puddles. And yeah, that's it for the boss. I would lust this boss personally. It's a pretty hard boss, but you also have to lust the other stuff. So it's kind of hard to deal with. Go up here. So now let's get into the mage area. So there's 4 different types of mobs here. There's the Hapless Assistance, which does a Fungal Fist. It's just a tank buster. Nature damage does a crap ton of damage. It does not recast on CC, but it's a fast cast, so you don't even want to use CC on it, or it's kind of hard to use CC on it. Then there's the Infested Ice Caller, the Putrid Pyromancer, and the Addled Arcanomancer. I'm going to go ahead and play so you guys can see. So the Addled Arcanomancer does 2 casts, the Arcane Blast, which is just a 2-person kick rotation. And then there's the Spatial Disruption, which is it targets the farthest person out or just one of the ranged. I don't think this one respects farthest person out as much, but yeah, it targets a ranged, and it'll do a circle on the ground that you have to dodge. And if you don't get dodged, you get hit by a bunch of damage. It's similar to the boss ability, which I'll go over when we get to the boss. But yeah, the boss ability also does a suck, and this one does not do a suck. It just does big damage. And then yeah, so if you're like a rogue or like a warlock here, Curse of Tongues, Mind Numbing Poison, super helpful for kicking. And you also want to always do late kicks. That way people can get their kicks off cooldown as much as possible. And yeah, so this next pack is the hardest pack in the entire dungeon. It has 1 Addled Arcanomancer, 1 Pyromancer, 1 Ice Caller. And they all move to whichever one you pull first. The best way to deal with this pack is to kick the Arcanomancer and the Pyromancer only and let the Frostbolt go off. And then they'll all do their specials. The Pyromancer does a salvo, Cinder Bolt salvo, and it just shoots random bolts. It will do a set amount of bolts. And so if you're 1 person alive, you get all the bolts. If you're 4 people alive, you're splitting between 4, etc., etc. So if someone dies, you're going to take more damage. And then the Ice Caller does something called Cold Fusion, which puts a bunch of balls out, and if you run into them, you take a bunch of damage, and you get a stun with a dot component to it. And that is dispellable, but you don't want to get hit by that. It does a lot of damage. And then the Arcanomancer we already went over. But yeah, so basically you want to kill one of these mobs, and then rotate kicks on the Pyromancer and the Arcanomancer, and then let the Frost Caller go through because it does the least amount of damage. This pull is kind of hard even with Lust. So it's just a rough pack. Hopefully they nerf this, but it's probably the hardest pack in the whole entire dungeon. And you see we're already out of kicks. If you have a prop paladin, this is a lot easier. And our Boomkin dies 100 to 0. You can see how hard it is when casts go off like this. And then the Cinder Bolt salvos. And then there's Pyroblast again. And that's it. That's literally the whole fight. Again, they are not CCable. They are only kickable. So if you have like a prop paladin or something, this pack gets a lot easier. And yeah, ideally you don't have to deal with this in its current state. Hopefully they just nerf it before it comes out. This is probably one of the worst packs they've ever put in the game. So again, hopefully they nerf it. It's not very reasonable at the moment. And then we're going on to the boss. So Archmage Soul, she should sometimes she bugs out, but she should rotate between three things. So she has Fire, Frost, and Arcane, and usually it's the one she casted before plus the new one. So she's gonna do Fire first, then it's gonna be Fire Frost, and then Frost Arcane, and then Arcane Fire, and then Fire Frost, etc., etc., etc. Right now is sometimes she just if someone dies, she'll just start casting whatever she wants at random, which is not great, but yeah. Gonna fast forward so we get to the boss. And she does the same mechanics as the trash, except the arcane sphere is farthest person only, and it does a suck, which you'll see. And the Cinderbolt salvo also drops puddles on the ground now. And she also just does pure. There's Cinderbolt salvo right off the bat. You see the puddles it drops on the ground, and then she just does random tank busters throughout the fight. And then when her armor buff she is about to fall, she's going to switch to Fire Frost, and she's going to cast an image that does fire damage, and then herself is just going to cast the Frost ability. So here comes the Frost, which just summons these circles that are also baited on players. So the Frost circles, it originates from the center of whoever it picks. And so basically, if you're all stacked, both sets of balls will be the exact same spot. And then the next one is going to be Frost Arcane. And so the person with the arcane ball, whoever's standing out farthest, should stand either as far away as possible or in a way that the balls or you don't get dragged through the ice. So you can either stand really close and pull insta, or you can stand really far and drag after the mechanics go out. So you see here it bugs out. This nobody died, but it still just bugs out. Like I don't know what causes it completely, but like the last time we tested it, it was only after someone died. This is a little bit older footage, so this might have just been straight up bugs. She's casting fire again. There's the fire arcane. So you see the pole right there. You kind of get what I'm talking about. And yeah, this fight's just weird. It's basically just all about doing the arcane mechanic. So if you do the arcane mechanic correct, the overlaps aren't as bad. If you do the arcane mechanic wrong and it's like pulling halfway through the cast, if you aren't like super paying attention, then you can just die straight up. And then hopefully we get a Frost Arcane here so you guys can see it. Yeah, here's Frost Arcane. So you see the orb, and then it's gonna pull. So you see how like if it comes if it gets baited there and it's like not super far, then it can kind of mess with you. But you should also just be moving early. So this is the last boss y'all knew. So one little tip, if you guys are like rezzing or people are running back for whatever reason on this fight, if someone goes through the portal early, it will start the boss timers before everyone's there, and then it'll summon the ad early. And the reason that's bad is because he has a 300% damage taken increase that goes away once the first ad spawns. And so the boss does 3 abilities. He does Genesis, Verdant Eruption, and Colossal Blow. Genesis summons the Sproutlings that you have to walk over or let them go, either one. Verdant Eruption spawns the big ad, which I'll talk about. And then Colossal Blow, he does a frontal. And when that frontal finishes the cast, it does party-wide damage. And then the ad just does ticking AoE damage on the entire group. There's the Colossal Blow, boom. And he does a lumbering swipe on the NPC that you just don't want to be in front of. And you're basically just doing as much damage to the boss as humanly possible in the 300% damage phase, and then killing the ad as fast as possible so you have more uptime on the 300% damage phase. Here comes the ad, and you're going to see we're going to do ticking AoE damage. And he's going to do the Colossal Blow, and this is the hard overlap. You want a defense of this. And then he's going to do Genesis. So he does about one stomp every time before every Genesis. And if you have like a VDH or a prop paladin, ideally just VDH, you can kind of not soak these and you can just deal with them. And then here's the Colossal Blow again. Boom. These ads don't really do anything. They just do group damage if their casts go off. They do recast on CC. And then here comes another Colossal Blow. It looks like he does 2 Colossal Blows between every ad spawn. And then he does 1 Colossal Blow before the Genesis. And then we're going to rinse repeat this area here. And this is the one you want to defend, have like a CD for every time. This is the hard overlap. Stuff like Zephyr, Feint, any DR works. And he's going to do Genesis again. And then he should do 2 Stomps and then another ad. For Lust, it's just whenever you have full CDs, I would probably, if you don't have CDs on pull, I would just do it after the first ad. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole fight. It's pretty straightforward. You just want to make sure you're using defensives during the Colossal Slam overlap with the Lumbering ad. And that's it. That's the whole dungeon. It's pretty straightforward. All the mechanics aren't, there's not really many complicated mechanics. I'd say the hardest boss is the second boss. The third boss, if you get really bad RNG over it bugs out. So I would say the second boss can be like the most coordination heavy fight. So I would prepare for that. And yeah, hope you guys have a good one. Hope you learned something. If you have any questions about the dungeons, I'll put it in the description down below. I finished my Brew and VDH guide. I'll post those in the comments or the description as well. And yeah, that's about it. Have a good one.